Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to have Glow Aguilar here from Up Zell. Hi, Glow. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm good. We are so excited to have you. I know it's been some time in the making. We've been wanting to get Glow on our interview podcast for a while. So I'm so glad we finally were able to coordinate schedules and make this happen. But we want, and we are here, as you all know, and those of you that have listened to our Bella interviews before, is we really want to get the story behind the business. We want to get to know the business owner, not just as a business owner, but as a human being and as a person that's navigating this beautiful world and kind of how you got to where you are. So that's why we're here with Glow, and I'm really excited to get started. And so we're just going to open it up, and I'm just going to ask you, how did you or tell us a little bit about you. Like, who is Glow? If you were to describe yourself to someone who has no clue, have never met you, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say Glow is multidimensional, so many intersections that it has propelled me to start my own business. Because as a first gen student, I was very limited on my options to what I was going to do as a career, how I was going to financially stabilize myself. So I always had a keen thing for being an entrepreneur. I was always called that. I was always called too ambitious. So with those traits in mind, I figured, why not have my own business? Why not do something that I'm not seeing out there? Something that represents me, something that I'm like, wow, I can relate to this. This is something that I've been wanting, but it wasn't there. And what was that? That was like handmade candles that represented my culture. So it all started with my artistic vision because I didn't go to school for actual arts. I went to school for women's studies and sociology on Dominguez Hills. So go Toros. And honestly, because of that, I realized that I wanted to lean more towards my artistic self. Like I wanted to express myself artistically. And that was through candles. And I think it started as a hobby, but then it also allowed me to connect with my culture, something I was not allowed to do as a child, something that I had to assimilate to America. I had to learn, the ways that, were more Western rather than Eastern or indigenous. So because of that, I started doing research and I started attending events that, were Oaxacan. And because of that, I started learning more about myself and actually embracing myself more and actually feeling like I love myself more. And I wanted to see that also cultivate through what I wanted to bring out to the world.
That is so beautiful. And I feel like that was one of the beauties of entrepreneurship is like you get to kind of free that creative spirit, right? I think sometimes we're too tied into like boxes, right? Like we need to be this or we have to be this. And sometimes we're prisoners of our own thinking. Like we set it so much for ourselves, like, no, this is what I need to do, that we don't give ourselves a grace to have a little bit of flexibility. Like it's okay to change course. And I feel like being an entrepreneur and being a business owner allows you to do that. Like you can explore, discover what you really like, what's that outlet, and like you said, turn your hobby into something that's sustainable, not just for you as a business owner, but it also helps you share and spread that love and that message with others. And so that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And so you mentioned a little bit about what your product is. So can you just tell us a little bit more kind of behind the scenes, like what is your product or products and kind of how you go about your business?
So my products right now are mostly focused on wholesale and retail and like private label candles. So what that means is that I make handmade candles, and because of that, people have noticed it. And the reason people have noticed it is because they're very different. They're more natural. And I feel like that's the way that the candle business is leading more now. Is like make it as organic as possible, and that's beautiful, and I love that. But the reason my product is also different and it's also beautiful is because it mixes two of my cultures, so Guanajuato and Oaxaca. So Guanajuato is known for El Dia de las Flores, which is a day of festival for flowers, and throughout the whole town, literally if you go to Guanajuato in the summer, you'll see that, and it's full of flowers. So I put flowers in my candles because of the reason I make it look like flowers. I actually have one right here that is on my desk that looks like a flower, and it's literally my same color because I'm in my pink era.
Oh,
So And this was also really naturally dyed, which is like another factor that I learned from Oaxaca. So in Oaxaca, they make natural dyes, and they're also known for like artesanos, which is they make handcrafted like arts. And that's again my culture. So mixing those two together felt very spiritual for me. And also, again, it helped me heal so much because I started learning so much about my culture. I started doing research, like how are the artesanos right there, like managing all of this. So because of that, I didn't want to add more work to myself, but I wanted to also be able to add my own touch to it because I don't just want to resell. I want to make it my own, and I also want to add my own touch, but I want it to be like a community product. So what does that mean is that I have also candles that are in bases that come from Oaxaca. And that means that I help my community back home and I can actually support someone that's from the same hometown as my father. And honestly, I feel like that's very beautiful because that actually like creates a whole ecosystem where we're supporting each other. And that was the whole idea, because I didn't only want to support myself, I also wanted to support people back home. Because again, I know the reason why people migrate. I know the reason why, the US feels a certain way to have about, immigrants. And I didn't want that representation. I wanted to be rather more of a beautiful thing where it's rather embraced. And I see that when people buy my candles, they always question, oh, where's that base from? Or what influenced you to make this? Like, they look so different, like they look so cute, they look so beautiful. And then I tell them it's based around Oaxaca and Mexico. And Guanajuato just added the flowers to it because, again, can't forget Guanajuato.
I love that. So yeah, thank you for sharing kind of how the business was born and the concept of it. And you talked about your inspiration and it really being your culture. Is there anyone in particular that kind of inspired you to start the business? So I know where the inspiration comes from, but in terms of the actual business and saying like, hey, you could do this, you could launch it, like, was there someone that kind of encouraged you or inspired you, or that you were motivated by, perhaps as a mentor or someone that encouraged you?
Honestly, maybe this is gonna sound egotistic or just self-centered, but it took me a lot to get to this level. But honestly,
Mm,
myself, because again, I'm undocumented. I don't have a lot of go. Like, logically speaking, there is very few things that I am allowed to do, legally speaking, without, crossing certain barriers that are just going to put me in more harm's way. And it's also very difficult in like the market of creating like your actual like job stability, because of the fact that not a lot of people want to hire freelancers. Not a lot
mm,
of people want to deal with that because they feel like it's just too much and there's just regulations that go to it. So it was myself because, as I mentioned, I have always been an entrepreneur. I didn't really resonate with the word. I actually always was like, okay, I guess entrepreneur means like just selling stuff. So I guess I'm that. I've been doing that since I was in high school, because I used to sell my old clothes because people always told me, oh, you dress so well. Like, where did you get that shirt? And I'm like, I thrifted it, but then I cut it and I did this and that. And they're like, oh, well, that's cool. Can you do that for me? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I do it for myself because things don't fit me, because
yeah,
I like the way it looks, but it's not something that I want to see myself like constantly doing.
yeah,
So then I was like, you know what? Most of the time I get tired of my clothing because I feel like, it already run its season, but like throwing it in the trash just seems illogical. So
mhm,
let me sell it to you. And that's where it started.
yeah,
So I always pushed myself like in some form or another because of my creative side. And also because people were like, I want that. And can you just give it to me? I'll give you money, or we'll trade
yeah,
services, which is
yeah,
something again that I think is just like the household I grew up, is like you have to figure it out and you have to go out there and somehow manage. I grew up with parents that taught me that, at the end of the day, it's going to be all by yourself. And it is a very hard lesson to learn, but it's also very beautiful. And it's the reason why I am allowed to, like, live the life that I live. I'm in my own space now. I feel very called to, continue doing what I do. And was there many factors that contribute to me starting my business? Of course. I cannot deny the community that embraced me, that, like, taught me about so much of these things. Like, it all started like in the center that is for dreamers. It's
mm,
different, it's called differently now. And in Dominguez Hills and my community college that I went to, they would always teach us that, like, how can you exist outside of an academic space?
Mhm.
Because the academic space is not always going to embrace you, and there's very limited internships, and there's very limited like job openings that you're going to be able to immediately jump into. I was fortunate enough that I did have a job and I have the stability, but I knew that I also was not going to actually like always constantly have that, because administrations change, people change their minds, job markets, can plummet, right? Like there's just so much factors that will affect me even more than that. So learning about businesses and like learning about EINs and like all those factors were because of school. Academically, I learned that in school, thankfully.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of me where I felt very embraced by people that have been pivoting the way, like undocumented professionals, like Sherrod. She has built such a way that it makes you want to continue doing your business, even when you feel like crying and you're like, I can't do this. Like, I don't understand these logistics. But you're like, no, there's people out there that have been doing it and I want to do the same, because if I'm a domino effect that actually like makes it easier for people that are younger than me, younger generations that are going to be dealing with this, or even people that are citizens. Like sometimes I'm helping my friends that are actually like, they're born here and they're like, how have you been starting your business? Or what did you do? And I tell them like, hey, there's this program called Bellas. Yeah. If you're Latina, go for it. If you're brown and you want to be surrounded by beautiful women that are learning how to do businesses, join Bellas. And trust me, I'm always sharing resources, because I feel like if we share resources, we're going to push each other to start your own business. But it's also not neglect the fact that the person that's mainly doing it is yourself.
Yes. That is so beautiful. That gives me chills. I mean, never, never should you apologize for giving yourself that pride and that credit for being the one to initiate and inspire yourself to start the business that you started or whatever venture in the future. Because I think that as women, as Latina women, we don't do that well sometimes, right? We acknowledge, and just like you did, that you have a tribe, you have a community, and there's been stepping stones along the way, but you're the one taking advantage of those opportunities. You're the one pushing yourself when you feel like giving up or when things are hard. Like at the end of the day, we're surrounded by all this beauty and encouragement, but you're at the core of that. And so I think that you beautifully illustrated like why that is like such a good thing and why people need to like own that, right? And not be ashamed of it, because sometimes we kind of put it on other people like, oh, it was because of them, or it was because like, no, I did that. And so I think the way that you put it was just really nice, and I know encouraged a lot of women out there. Just your story, I knew you were a beautiful human. I just now I'm learning your story has so much deeper level now, and I'm just like, wow, so inspired by you and just your determination, right? To just like finding the way and even just being creative with the process. Like, so you talk about you were creative with your clothes, but you were creative in thinking, okay, wait a minute, this could actually help me. Like, I'll help you and you help me, right? Like, you're gonna get the clothes you want, and I'm gonna be making some money from this, and I can build on that. So very bright, very intelligent, I think, as you were processing that and kind of developing, nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit, I'll call it. And so I'm curious about, you've touched on it a little bit, but just how you grew up. So if I were to have met Little Glow, if Little Glow and I were friends in elementary or middle school, or just growing up and into adolescence, like how would you describe your story there? Like what would you share with us about how you were as a child in your childhood?
Wow. I actually been reflecting on that because I go to therapy and therapy has a way of bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, I love talking about it to this point. Like I used to not want to talk about it because, it was such a journey that I went through that I know most children like don't go to about it. But then like hearing like other people's stories and like again joining this like tribes that it's about embracing the fact that you're Oaxacan, the fact that you're queer and you're Oaxacan, the fact that you're undocumented, and the fact that you grew up in so many intersectionalities. But at the end of the day, you know, Little Glow when up to 7 was in Mexico. So I was living my best era that was literally me out there in nature and just enjoying the most beautiful food ever, surrounded by animals because I used to live in a farm.
Yeah.
And so there was horses, there was cows, and I got to see, the cycles of lives. And then I came here, and it was difficult because I look different from people. It was still like not everyone was a little brown girl with like long black hair. Like it was different. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I feel like for some reason, and I've been told this, there's just always the right people around me. I have guardian angels that are just real life human beings that feel like reincarnations of angels. Like they're just beautiful human beings that protect me, they guide me, and that was pretty much my journey. Was I more shy? Yes, of course. I just transitioned from like a different country to another place that's foreign, and that I know I have to be very careful because of why my mother taught me, be very careful. And my father was like, focus on your academics. So there was that factor. I grew up academically excelling because that narrative of the perfect dreamer is instilled in us from home. It's not only instilled in society, it's also instilled at home. There was not that expectation that I had to excel, but I felt that pressure within myself because children are very observant. Like honestly, you don't have to tell them much. Like they'll get it
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
Children are intelligent. So I was one of those children. I wasn't in La La Land. I kind of wish I was because then I would have been more artistic. I would have like been like way more free flow, and I think it would have been easier for me. So that obviously made me develop anxiety. And with that anxiety, I felt like college was not the option for me. In middle school, even though I was excelling, even though in middle school I was being at a college level already. And I was like, how am I going to pay for college? Like all of these things as a middle
Yeah.
schooler.
Wow.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
already thinking that. I was like, that's not going to be the option for me. And that obviously made like school very fearful for me in high school because I started going to magnet classes, honor roll, and everything of that. And I had moved. So that made it even more of a difficult transition because not only do you have teenage angst,
Yeah.
and all those hormones, but you're also undocumented and you're like, oh, how am I going to go to school? Like even
Mm.
if I do well right now, I have to get scholarships, I have to keep pushing myself. But
Mm.
everything that else is that's going on in the background that is emotionally a turmoil, I
Mm.
have to ignore. But that was impossible for me because I'm emotional. I am who I am because I let my emotions and I let my intuition and my intelligence guide me. When that mixes in together as a teenager, it makes you do very recklesses, at least in my point. It made me do things that I could have avoided. So I
Mm.
dropped out of high school
Mm.
and I decided that I wanted to venture on my own and I wanted to see if I left it all to Glow, where would Glow take me? And I just started going on my own. And then I realized, you know what? It's difficult out here. Like I can do it. I will figure it out. I will figure out a way to make money and be on my own and be sustainable. But it's not actually like there's no long term here. There is no actual stability here. And that's when I decided to go back to school when I was 17. And I re enrolled myself in independent studies, a school called Opportunities for Learning, which was beautiful because it allowed me to work and it allowed me to go to school. And I was managing a lot. But I feel like that was the journey I needed to take because I met the most amazing art teacher ever. And she was the reason why I wanted to tap back into art because she saw my vision. She pushed me beyond my limits that I was like, wow, like this is who I am. Like there's this artist in me that just wants to keep coming out. And not only that, even when I'm not making art, that artist is still out there in the world and is still managing it through that artistic lens. Because she told me something. She was like, when you make your art, you already know what you're gonna do. There's no one who's gonna take you off of it. Even the syllabus, she's like, I have it there, but you just figure it out a way to go about it in a different way. And that's just you in life. There's these rules, there's these things, the norms that they're expected of you, but you're like, yeah, nah, I'm gonna make my own thing about it. And you just have to embrace that. And I was like, oh my God, yes, please read me to filth. But that honestly was eye-opening to me because after that I just started embracing it more. I just started being more of an entrepreneur, being myself more and realizing, you know what, it's fine. I'm taking a different norm and a different route for me because it works for me and that's okay, which led me to going to community college. And it was the best option for me because not only financially, but because I graduated financially like debt free. Same with my undergrad for Dominguez Hills. I transferred 4 year debt free. I was actually getting paid to go to school because of all the fellowships I was doing. Like money was coming into my pocket. It allowed me to stay myself. Was it exhausting? Yes. Was all of this like a headache and like I was crying so much? Yes. But all of it was part of the journey.
Yeah.
And that's what Glow is today now.
That is so beautiful. I feel just to see, like, as you're describing kind of the building blocks and the experiences of your life, like, it is no surprise why you are who you are and doing what you're doing. I think all of it's um, just, how do I say this? It's an expression of who you are, right? It's not, it doesn't define you, like, but it's an expression, like your creative art, the fact that you're a business owner, the fact that you have your space now, like you said, like all these accomplishments and kind of steps you've taken in life, like it's not surprising now, like why, right? I hear and I see and I feel the energy of like how you've grown into that and how your experiences have shaped you. And it's yeah, it's just I'm just like in awe. It's so beautiful to learn, you know. And so I think with that comes, on the business side, like you've shared some of your struggles personally, right? There's struggles in becoming a business owner. So can you share a struggle that you feel comfortable sharing with the audience in your business and how you've overcame that, if you have, or maybe it's something you're still working towards?
Mm. Oh yeah. No, I would say it's like the constant struggle of turning your hobby into an actual business.
Mm,
Because again, it started for fun for me. Like I was obsessed with candles in 2020. Like actually 2019 is when I got so obsessed, but in 2020 it took more of an obsession. So I didn't realize that until like I started reflecting that, like I was like, where did this really started? Because like I always loved candles. I grew up with candles. Like if you're in a Mexican household, you grew up with candles. You're religious, you grow up with candles. Like candles are a staple if you just happen to have that as a staple in your home.
mhm,
So that has been a constant struggle for me because I always feel like, am I neglecting an aspect of me just to
mm,
embrace this financial stability that I'm trying to achieve because
mhm,
of my business? Because again, I'm not only supporting myself, but I'm also supporting my community back home and anybody that I make business, because I choose to make business with other brown folk, queer folk, like anyone who lives in those intersectionalities. I want to work together. I want to collaborate together. I want to network together. I want to help build each other up. And that itself is a constant struggle because again, personally, I have a lot going on mentally and emotionally.
mhm,
And not only that, like my business is not my full-time job. My
mhm.
full-time job is I work all these other things personally. Like I have 3 jobs, okay? That's why it feels exhausting because I have to make time for my business. And recently I took a break from my business because the previous months I worked really hard. Like I was getting wholesale orders and it was all by myself, me working that. And that's when I realized if I actually want to do this, I have to do it right, but I also have to make sure I don't burn out. So
Yeah.
that itself is like the struggle of maintaining my own values, but also taking care of myself because I know that if I make my candles, I want to make them with intention. Like
Mm,
I don't want it to be with negative energy. And that's my spiritual side as well, but it's also just my intellectual side. It's like you can't work yourself to burn out, then that's not going to help nobody. That itself is just going to cause a break. So it's okay for you to take a break. And I took a month's break, and in that month I was able to stabilize myself even more. And now I
mm.
understand why I took that break, because now it's all coming together and it's making more sense now.
Yes, I love that. I mean, like, wait, one of my next question was gonna be your words of wisdom, but I feel like you're giving a lot of those nuggets like throughout. And thank you for saying that because I think you're right. We see a pause or we see it as like a negative sometimes, right? It's like I have to keep going or else I'm gonna lose momentum or else when in fact we don't see the pause as like a necessity to keep going, as like a good thing, as a healing thing, right? And I think you're definitely normalizing that for business owners and entrepreneurs everywhere, is that you did it and it can be helpful, and it's necessary sometimes. And so thank you for sharing that. I think that the intersectionality, as you talk about, like, yeah, our business is not separate from us, right? Just like all these identities that we have, like it is part of who we are, right? And so we can't necessarily have our business over here and we're operating over here. It's like, no, it's what we do, right? And so there is a part that kind of comes together. And so because of that, because you give so much of yourself emotionally and mentally, that break becomes really important. So thank you for sharing all that. As we're kind of winding down on our time together, I just wanted to leave the audience with so many nuggets you've given us, so many golden nuggets you've given us. But any kind of final words of wisdom or advice that you want to give the women that are listening to your interview?
Honestly, it has to relate back to what you just said too, because I want to echo on that. What I'm trying to say is that time is not linear. Like, if you feel like you have an end goal, that's beautiful. But it's also normal for time to move differently. And it's going to move different for each one of us because we're on our own journey. We
Yes.
are women. So that means that we have different identities. Some of us are mothers, some of us are elder sisters. Like, the eldest daughter role is nothing to be diminishing. And honestly, some of us are caregivers, some of us are partners, some of us have full-time jobs. And those identities make time move differently for us because as business owners, yes, there's momentum that we want to build on, but it's also important to just take in that the fact that you built that momentum, that means that you've been accomplishing a lot of things. And I hope that you're making time to also acknowledge all those momentums, all those beautiful accomplishments that you did, even if they're just small, even just like the fact that you just register your business, like the fact that you already got the paperwork done. Trust me, it's gonna make things way more easier. It's going to make life easier for you when tax season comes, which is such a headache for most business owners because you're like, oh, all of a sudden I don't know where anything went. But no, you
Yeah.
do. So celebrate the small accomplishments, celebrate the big accomplishments, celebrate everything, but also take time with it. You're gonna get there when you get there, and it's gonna make so much sense when you get there because you're like, oh, yeah, I did need it that way. Or yes, it makes sense why I started building small customers slowly because now I'm ready for big customers. I'm ready for big orders. I'm ready to sell out. I'm ready to go viral. I'm not ready to go viral yet because I know I need more calmness right now. I want to build clients personal intersection, like those interpersonal relationships with my clients are so important for me
Yeah.
because I want to know where my candles are going. I want to know what you're doing with them. Like, yes, there's private labels, there's white labels, but I want to know where are they going to end up? Like, tell me, please. Tell me about the event. Tell me who are you giving them away to? Like, what's the location? And I want to put that intention in there. And some people that's important. To some people it's not. They're like, I want to end up in this goal because I have way bigger goals. And it only makes sense to you because you know where the end goal is, and goals can change. So that's okay. So move with your own time, move at your own pace, and go for it, honestly.
I love that. Oh my gosh, Glow. This has been, I feel like I've learned so much, not just from you and your beautiful story, which I have, but also just my perspective right now is like I feel inspired myself to keep going and to do more and to innovate, and thank you for bringing the conversation about identity and intersectionality and being okay with taking a pause and giving yourself credit. I mean, there's just so many things that we've learned in the short amount of time that we've been talking here with you. So I appreciate you so much. I am so inspired by you. I think you're amazing, incredible. I know everyone that's listening is going to feel the same way if they don't already know you. And for all of you listening, support Glow and her business Up Zell. You've heard the beautiful story behind the business, both the human and the business itself. And so I know folks are going to want to follow you and support you. And we just ask that you do that. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Glow, thank you so much for being on our interview podcast. I know we will continue to connect. So um, we'll Let's tell everybody our goodbyes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.